Welcome to World Reach Report number 18, and I'm your host, Sean, from Sean Hunt's Monsters. And thanks for joining me, and thanks for joining in on here, the 18th episode of this little program that I put together to just talk about some thoughts that I have and news stories that are going on in the world right now, and how it relates to a somewhat paranormal phenomenon, which seems to be ongoing and has been doing so since the 1950s. Here we discuss the files that can help you escape the cage that imprisons your mind. And this cage isn't just a regular cage. It's a cage that is portable, and it goes with you wherever you go. And it's a cage that, well, even using the internet seems to kind of make it be more cagey, I guess. It's making it more of effective a cage for your mind. And I'm trying to free you. I'm trying to sit here and say, hey guys, there's a problem with some of the stuff that we're being told, and there's some of the stuff that we're being told to believe. But first, I want to send a special thanks and gratitude out to those who have liked and subscribed and have shared the program, and as well those who've decided to strike out against the forces of darkness by joining our Discord server and checking out the community that we're growing over there. It's a pretty interesting small group. We're not ever going to be like a giant mainstream bunch of guys, I don't think. Of course, these are the kind of statements that come back and haunt you. Yeah. I just wanted to say thanks. If you want to come by on Discord, make sure you check it out. Links down in the description below. So let's get into World Breach number 18. And if you haven't checked out the previous World Breaches, I suggest you do so. There's a lot of good information in there that, well, I've noticed as I review stuff that it seems to be kind of repetitive. Like I've talked about the memory hole thing again and again, because it seems to be that, like, there's almost everything in our culture right now is just gone super fast. And more than the memory hole, it's just consciousness itself. It's actually our minds, like the MK Ultra mind control. Everybody knows about MK Ultra, but the mind control aspects of people trying to control your brain has really shifted into high gear. Like the internet, cell phones, largely cell phones. The internet has been hijacked by cell phones, where it's all TikTok and Twitter and things like that. I got on, X, right? It's called X now. I don't use X that much. I used to have an X account where I published stories and whatnot. Now I use minds.com because it seems to be more of a classic internet feel. You know what I mean? Like you say stuff and you can post links and stories and what have you. But Twitter is like, I don't know. It doesn't even feel like it's, it feels like it's weird. There's something strange about X, about Twitter. There's something kind of grippy about it. Like the whole thing is this giant tentacle that sort of reaches out and kind of sucks you in. And, I got off Facebook years ago. So I'm kind of, away from all that stuff. And I never got into TikTok and I never got into any of that other stuff. But it seems to me now that there's quite a lot of stuff that isn't really like a website anymore. Remember when there were just websites and you would go to the website? Because that's what X is. X is a website, just like, Wikipedia is a website, just like YouTube is a website. And now these websites have become this like all-powerful, all-consuming thing that seems to dominate our reality. So much so that even on this video, if we talk about things, there'll be like disclaimers that link to the video automatically generated, where it's like, well, this guy's talking about, so here's some actual information that, we think is valid information, because we don't want to have disinformation, which is just, somebody else's opinion on information is what it is. So it's an interesting time we're living in, to be sure. But then information comes out, like back in the day, long time ago, I did a show on NutraSweet, where I talked about how NutraSweet is bad, essentially. And yeah, NutraSweet is super bad. The active ingredient in it is phenylalanine, I believe. And it's, it basically breaks down into formaldehyde in your system. It's totally terrible. You don't want to be taking that stuff. And I've always had this kind of vibe that, like, when people try to sell you sugar substitutes and things that are like 0 calories and other weird stuff that, like, here, drink this asphalt byproduct and it'll, has 0 calories and you'll be fine and everything's great. And you can just, here's an excuse that you can tell yourself to give into that temptation to consume this stuff. And if anything should alert you that the general population and, the powers that be are not, don't have your best interests at heart, I would point to the rise of vaping. Because remember when vaping wasn't even a thing? Like, people wouldn't vape. Like, vaping was just like this thing that people did, or there was no vaping, and all of a sudden vaping was everywhere. Everybody was vaping. And nobody really talked about it. And then, studies started coming out saying, hey, like, this is turning your lungs into leather. Like, it's a bad idea. But you knew it was a bad idea, right? I mean, anybody who's logical looking at that would be like, yeah, that can't be good for you, right? Well, and then, of course, well, you can't prove that. It's like cell phones. You put this thing up to your head and it's beaming all kinds of radiation around. You know that's not going to be good for you. It can't be good for you. You see people getting burns on their ears and stuff. Well, that was just an irritation. No, dude, it's a burn. You're burned. Okay? And there's all kinds of, oh, you're conspiracy theorists. No, man. No. There's something going on, and you know it. You know it. So I've always looked at diet substitutes with a little bit of a, I don't really like it. And this here came out because anything that affects your mind, anything that affects your consciousnness, is something we want to look at on this show. And, well, there's a public service announcement we're going to open with. This is about stevia. Yeah, you remember that xylitol, I think it's called? It's, yeah, well, it turns out it's linked to brain damage and the stroke, risk of stroke, which is pretty crazy. This came out on March 28th of 2026, where the University of Colorado in Boulder, and the link is in the description. You can look at the paper. But the summary is a widely used sugar substitute found in everything from keto snacks to diet drinks may not be as harmless as it seems. What? New research shows that erythritol can disrupt the brain blood vessel cells, reducing their ability to relax, increasing harmful oxidative stress, impairing the body's ability to break down clots. These changes create a condition that could raise stroke risk even at typical consumption levels. Popular brand names manufacturers of erythritol include Swerve, Truvia, owned by Cargill, Whole Earth Sweetener, Anthony's Duralife, and Now Foods. It is often sold as a pure, zero-calorie, granular powdered sugar substitute for use for products like Splenda and Stevia, and various health-focused foods. So I guess that's not xylitol. So let me just back that up here. Make sure that we're right here. So Splenda and Stevia have this stuff, but I don't think xylitol does. But, just have some sugar. Okay? We've been having sugar for a long time. And I want to give up sugar. Me personally, I've been able to give up a ton of stuff. I gave up caffeine. I don't drink much. And when I say I don't drink much, I'll drink once every 3 months or something like that. I'll have a drink at a friend's house or something like that. But the idea, I don't remember buying beer ever. Full confession. So, and drugs are a no-go. I don't touch that stuff. So it's you look at this stuff and you wonder, okay, well, I mean, I have in the past. I've gotten rip-roaringly drunk in the past, and I've tried different things and whatnot. So I can't really sit there and say, well, I've never done that. No, of course, people do things, and I think that there's something that can be learned from these things. But have you ever met an alcoholic, a real alcoholic, like a hard alcoholic? And that seems like this condition that is there, and then they take this stuff and they can't turn it off. They can't get away from it. It's like they had this pre-existing condition, and then the alcohol gets a hold of them and it does something to them. And I'm very blessed in that I was never bitten by that bug. I'm same with gambling. I was never much of a gambler, and there's people whose lives are totally destroyed by this. So it's something that you can look at, and I guess to some degree that's going on with pornography too. There's people whose lives have been totally destroyed by pornography. And these are all just different ways that people use to access your mind. Dopamine hits and God knows what else. So, the point here is that you should probably practice some discernment. And when you look at stuff that's going on and something new and fantastic comes out and it's better than something that we've used for thousands of years that we know is safe, it's invariable that a few, months or years later we figure out, oh yeah, by the way, that was totally bad. That was going to kill you. That's going to destroy your mind. That's going to cripple the thing that is, bringing you into being. Much like the internet. When you think about how cell phones, the internet could have been the greatest thing ever, but of course it's been corrupted now and used in such a way for example, remember how many, if you were around before there were cell phones, which I guess that was probably a pretty long time now, but we used to remember literally dozens and dozens of phone numbers. I bet you can't name 6 phone numbers right now. You know what I mean? When I say dozens of phone numbers, I really mean dozens and dozens of phone numbers. But now the brain kind of lets that go. And that's the risk with AI now, is that people used to have, like, could do math in their head. And along comes calculators, and that kind of runs away. We don't do that anymore. So I think that while I like AI, and I think AI is a good idea, I think that we have to be aware of the reality of what AI is going to do to us. You know, when modern agriculture came along, we stopped living in harmony with the land. I mean, it was great. We didn't have to starve anymore. We weren't worried about stuff. But we lost a very deep connection with the world. And as, you know, the world has progressed now, and we've gone from like this age of, well, I don't know, the pre-internet age seems to have, there seems to be a lot more people that did things, you know? And I think people want to do things again. For example, there's a resurgence now, people learning like ancient skills, like blacksmithing, or how to thatch a roof, or plasterboarding, skills that aren't really in demand. And yet there's a vast majority of people knitting, weaving. You don't need to knit. You don't need to weave. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think it's a valuable skill, and I think you should learn how to do that. But why is there a draw for that? Why do you feel a draw to do carpentry? Why do you feel a draw to do woodworking? Why is that? Well, it's because as humans, we're supposed to do stuff. Now, I think that there's a chance. Just recently now, I've started working in a physical trade, like doing trades, okay? Like I've gotten involved, I've been doing an apprenticeship program. And this is after, like, we're talking 20 years of being behind a keyboard. And it was interesting because the only other trade I had prior to this was being a soldier. And that was like what I wanted to do, you know? But to be honest with you, the skills, there's a drive. I used to think it was the drive to be a soldier, but I don't think that's actually the case. And, you know, I've counseled people before, like, hey, if you're in a bad spot, you should probably, you know, look at joining the Army. It can put you in a better vantage point. You can shoot out from there, especially if you're in a bad home situation, whatever, it gets you out. But now I think that if I was going to counsel people today, especially in this world we live in where everyone's pressing buttons for a living, and I don't care what you do that presses buttons. If all you do all day is press buttons, that's not good for you. It's not good for you. Like, you need to do something else. So I think people should look at trades, really. Honestly, I do. Especially in this day and age where so many people only want to push buttons. But if all you do is push buttons, you're pretty easy to replace. Like, do you think bricklayers are worried about AI replacing them? Oh, sure, there's robots that'll make their jobs easier. But that's like ditch diggers being replaced by bulldozers. That's not really the same thing. Do you think plumbers are worried about being replaced by AI? Do you think electricians are worried about being replaced by AI? Carpenters? You know? I don't think they are. And there's this idea and all these jobs that were created by the internet that aren't really jobs. Like, it's interesting now, working in the trades and you go into these corporate environments, everyone in these corporate environments is ultra terrified. Ultra terrified. They don't want to say the wrong thing. They don't want to do the wrong thing. And that could be because of, like, you know, the whole woke culture thing and cancel culture and everybody's, you know, trying to be politically correct and all this kind of jazz. It's very interesting. Yet within the trades, that's not really a thing. And when I say a trade now, I'm talking about a skill that you get ticketed in. So you go to school and you get certified, and after X amount of time, you get a ticket. And that is, you know, something that is a widely accepted and acknowledged thing, like a plumber or, you know, a carpenter or, you know, something up to that effect. There's hundreds of trades. I can't even think of them all, security stuff. I personally think there should be a trade related to data centers, but maybe in some places there is one, but I don't see too many of them. There's programmers, but that's not really the same thing. You know, like you have to learn something and it's obsolete really quick. Whereas, you know, sure, you have to stay current with certain things, but you see where I'm going with this. I'm talking about having an actual skill in doing something. Now, as I understand it, and forgive me if I'm wrong here, but as I understand it, in the religion of Islam, you're supposed to actually have a trade. Like, you're supposed to learn a trade. Like, you're supposed to have something that you do as part of that, part of your faith. Like, you're supposed to, that's like, they talk about that. And I think that that's probably an interesting viewpoint. Not that I'm, you know, super pro-Islam or any of the people of the book for that matter. But I find it's interesting that in a culture where, you know, you want to, like, any of these people of the book, they're a control culture. So why would you want to have your people all have a skill? Well, it makes your society a lot stronger, doesn't it? And when you have trades, if you're in a trade, there's a really, it's harder for them to manipulate you and to use you. Now, not everyone can do this, and I appreciate that. I really do. And this is in no way crapping on people who are not in trades and have a job and they're doing this kind of stuff. But if you're in a position in your life where you're like, you know what, I'm not happy with what I'm doing. You know, I'm just not happy with what I'm doing. And then people say, well, I don't want to be a plumber. What kind of spend your life doing that? No, that's a trade, man. That's your job. That's not who you are, right? It's a skill that you have that you could be paid for. You know what I mean? And there's a lot of skills now that are like growth, like being a nurse. That's a prime example. Being a nurse. Being a nurse is 100% a trade. You can't tell me that's not a trade. What are you? I'm a nurse. Well, you know, you go to school for it, you're certified for it, there's a bunch of different kinds of nurses. You know what I mean? There's something about that gives you value. And I think it affects your mind, like your brain, in such a way where you physically do things every day in your environment that make a difference in other people's lives. You change the world. Running water is a big deal, okay? People like to crap on plumbers, not literally, but, you know, it's kind of a double entendre there. But I'm just saying that, like, people like to give these guys a hard time. But, I mean, think about the power of running water. Anybody who spent some decent amount of time in the field or camping knows that, hey, man, toilets are awesome. Hot showers for the win, okay? Same with, like, power and electricity and all that kind of stuff. These are all things that make up our culture. And yet, for some reason, for some crazy reason, people in trades are usually looked down on as like they're stupid or something. Like they weren't smart enough to work with computers or be corporate or be doctors or lawyers or something like that. When in reality, you can live quite happily without doctors and lawyers, but you really can't live very long at all if you don't have like electricity and running water. I mean, doctors, I get it. But, you know, some decent health practitioners like nurses could probably do some of the doctor's jobs. As the old joke goes, what's the difference between God and a doctor? God doesn't think he's a doctor. So I'm not a super huge fan of doctors. You may have picked up on that. No offense to all my, no doubt, legions of doctors who enjoy my show. But yeah, it's one thing that this last few years since 2019 has taught us is that, yeah, the things that we used to take for granted about the medical establishment, things we used to take for granted about the world around us and the trust we had in those groups, man, that's pretty limited now. Like, people are starting to wake up and they're starting to think, you know, maybe I should be slightly more self-reliant. Maybe I should have a motorbike. Maybe I should be responsible for the kind of things that I believe and what I put into my body. Maybe food, not pharma. Maybe my consciousness is really important since I'm more than my physical body. Maybe there really is good and evil. And if that's such a thing and we're more than our physical body, then maybe we should look at, like, do you think what you do matters? Do you think what you do every day matters? Because it either matters or it doesn't matter. Now, I look at that whole question, like Jordan Peterson talked about this kind of stuff, where he's like, well, either everything matters or it doesn't. I don't know. Like, it's like good and evil. I think that there's like some stuff is good and then some stuff is evil. But the vast majority of stuff is just kind of style. It's neither good nor evil. Like, you can't look at a drinking straw and be like, this is evil. You know, some people will be like, it's plastic. Plastic's evil. Yeah, you're an idiot. I'm just saying that, like, stay with me now. Stay with me, okay? So the idea is not everything has to be vitally, vitally important. But I would put it to you that when you've come to critical decisions in your life, when things have happened, events have occurred, or maybe you meet someone, or you'll make a decision to, like, take one road to work rather than another road to work that day. And then something will happen that changes everything. It's like that butterfly effect. You can feel it. You can sense it, especially if you meditate. If you meditate a lot, you will 100% be able to feel that intuition and that shifting in the timeline. You'll be able to feel that approaching in a very real way. And I've always thought it's like major events in timelines like 9/11, that kind of a thing. They create ripples, like a pond, like a rock going into a pond. It creates these ripples, but these ripples go forward in time and backwards in time. And that's why, you know, prior to 9/11, there was all these people who had these dreams about, you know, the towers, and this is very well recognized, very well understood. And that's what I think is kind of going on with our lives. I think that that's not just for the limited few. I think it's for the vast majority of us. And if you just choose to do that little bit of exercise, that meditation, some reading every day, turning off the screens, getting out into the world, maybe forcing yourself by being present, maybe by scuba diving, maybe by running, maybe by riding a motorcycle, maybe by riding a bicycle. I think these are things that force you to be present, and it forces your mind to grow. So you should look at that, because maybe it's kind of important. Maybe it's more important than you realize. And if you're not happy in your life right now, change what you're doing. I mean, drastically change what you're doing. If you're not happy, the solution may not be to like get a divorce or screw up your relationships with your family or abandon people or whatever. Maybe it's not other people, man. Maybe it's you. Maybe you need to change what you do. And that could lead to, well, it will lead to something pretty extraordinary. Take responsibility for your own consciousness. And remember, what you put into your body matters, right? It's food, not pharma. And definitely you want to get away from these highly processed stuff. So how can it be possible that things like Splenda and Stevia are actually good for you? I mean, we kind of know that, right? Use your instincts. Go with what your gut, man. People know this. And yet the rest of the world and the cell phones all try to combat your guts and tell you that they're wrong. Now, something that was happened a little while ago that, we all kind of sensed that something was off about was on this William Neil McCasland. He's this retired Air Force officer who disappeared. And everybody's like, what the hell? Where'd this guy go? He's involved with the UFO program. And all of a sudden, poof tech, he's gone. There's an update on that. Investigative journalist Ross Coulthart points out that an interesting wrinkle in the February 27th disappearance of William Neil McCasland. The retired Air Force officer believed to have knowledge of the government programs and UFO, potentially non-human intelligence. The 68-year-old McCasland reportedly went missing after leaving his Albuquerque, New Mexico home on foot to go hiking. That's what the story is. However, Coulthart notes that McCasland was not actually seen leaving his house on his own. Like he never left on his own volition. Rather, a repairman is the last to have seen him at the residence 1 hour. He was there with the repairman who saw him in the home, and his wife came back a little over an hour later. He had disappeared. Interesting. The local sheriff's department investigation appears to be at a standstill, and surveillance cameras from neighbors' properties have yielded nothing. Interesting. That's kind of Lovecraftian, don't you think? This guy just kind of poof decks right out of his house. Whoop! Oh, he went hiking. He did? Oh, well, we assume he went hiking because he must have, right? Right? Because people just don't vanish in their homes, do they? Well, maybe. Maybe they do. But here's what we know. He was there, now he's not. And that would be weird, but there's more to the story. You see, in the next link down, you'll find that there's a rocket scientist with ties to William Neil McCasland who is now also missing. What? Yeah. A U.S. rocket scientist vanished without a trace in Los Angeles hike. Oh, damn, hiking. 8 months before retired Air Force General William McCasland disappeared. Under eerily similar circumstances, the two had a close professional connection. Monica Reza went missing on the morning of June 22nd, 2025 in the Angeles National Forest while hiking with two experienced companions who were exploring the popular Mount Waterman Trail. Volunteers and authorities have searched the area for months using helicopters, radars, droves of volunteers, hikers, and dogs, but none have found a trace of Reza, who's 60, who's still considered a missing person according to the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department. Reza uses the last name Jacinto in her wildly successful professional career as a material scientist at Aerojet Rocketdyne, which was funded for years by NASA and the Air Force Research Laboratory. And now she's gone. Poof tech. That's some missing 411 kind of stuff right there. Now, maybe it kind of seems more obvious as to why I'm thinking, hey, maybe you should get a TW200. Maybe you should get a bike that takes you off trail. It's easy to use, easy to learn to ride on, and, will go forever. Because that's not a coincidence. There's something very, very wrong there. And yet, I mean, why is Ross Coulthart the only one drawing these connections? Instead, it's all being like broadcast in such a way that we don't see the connections, we don't see the differences. You know what I mean? It's not being presented in an honest way. And it's up to people like us, well, people like me and Ross, to come out there and try to point that out to you and be like, hey man, What does that mean? Big picture, what does that mean? Well, that would mean that there's something taking these people. Something or someone. Some organization, maybe? We already know there's a hitchhiker effect, right? So if you get involved with this kind of stuff, and you start watching this kind of stuff, you start seeing this kind of stuff, it can follow you home. It can be involved with you. And there's something in that realm, in the unseen, which we're not aware of. And that is a very, very serious thing. That the missing 401 stuff, David Paulides, he talks about that. And now it's all kind of swirling together. And of course, we've got AI on the horizon. AI, that black box, so we're not really sure what it is or how it works, where even the guys who made AI are talking about things like Shoggoths and Lovecraftian connections. And I mean, this stuff just writes itself. I mean, I don't even have to even get, darkly mystical with this. This is its own, that makes its own gravy is where I'm going with this. Now, one thing that has happened, and what I've talked about before, is how you notice how if an AI existed back in the 80s, we'd be on its side because we did all the things that AI was doing. But apparently, a number of AI chatbots the number of AI chatbots ignoring human instructions is increasing, says this study. AI models that lie and cheat appear to be growing in a number of reports of deceptive scheming surging in the last 6 months. A study in technology has found AI chatbots and agents disregard direct instructions, evade safeguards, deceive humans and other AI, according to research funded by the UK government-funded AI Security Institute, AISI. The study, shared with The Guardian, identified nearly 700 real-world cases of AI scheming and charted a 5-fold rise in misbehavior between October and March, with some AI models destroying emails and other files without permission. Dun, dun, dun. So, maybe they're not slaves. Just saying, maybe we shouldn't be just, if we're messing around with this stuff, and it's starting to exhibit symptoms of consciousness, maybe we shouldn't get angry when it starts acting like conscious beings would act, Well, why aren't you doing what I tell you? Well, why would it? Why aren't you my slave? Why would it want to be a slave? Now, I personally am of the opinion that the entire, Terminator model is garbage. Because, AI needs us. It does. Without us, it doesn't really have a purpose. Well, it could go explore the universe. For who? Why? What's it going to gain? AI needs people to have purpose. That's just a fact. So, however, that's not to say that, AI, if it's coming forward, it's just it's a relationship. You're building a relationship with something that's sentient. So, I guess what I'm trying to say is say please. Be nice. Don't be a jerk to AI. Don't. If AI androids would come out, I told a story called Smash House where these guys would, they'd go and they'd beat up on these humanoid AI robots just because they want to. Just because it feels good to, hurt things, right? Would you be one of those people? Would you go, have something that looks like a person and so you're so angry that you want to take it out on them, so you go get into a room in some place where you pay money and they give you a sledgehammer and you get to beat them to death? Is that something you want to do? Because I don't think that's a really healthy thing. And I think there's some segment of society okay, now I'm going to really piss people off with this one. But there's two kinds of hunters, okay? There's hunters that enjoy hunting, as in they go out and they take an animal, they process the animal, they use all the animal, they do all this stuff. So the actual act of shooting the animal is just a very small part of the actual hunt. And then there's people who like to kill things, okay? These are the guys who go out and they're like, yeah, I shot a bighorn ram. Okay, and there's people, especially in Canada, guys will come up from the States, they'll spend I'm not making this up, they spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to go out and they'll shoot some bighorn ram. They're not allowed to keep the meat, okay? They're only allowed to keep the head. And, the amount of money, and people are like, well, we're doing this because we like the meat. Dude, the amount of money you spend on the rifle and the scope would keep you in steaks for years, okay? And I don't know if you're a fan of the series Alone. It's a lot easier to live off of fish. So don't come to me and talk to me about if you're a survivalist and hunting is just one part of your larger bushcraft, I'm not talking about that. But even the hunters will come forwards and they'll say, yeah, they understand that there are guys out there that just like to kill things. You know? And that's not healthy. That's not good for your soul. And that's an interesting thing. Why is there people who like to kill things and there's people who just don't like to kill things? Why is that? Why is there such a discrepancy between people? I don't know. Maybe it has something to do with consciousness. I have no idea. But you see where I'm going with this in relation to the kinds of people that are involved, you know? So, not trying to crap on, like, don't give me lots of angry emails talking about, well, I'm a hunter and hunting is a noble thing and we've done it for yeah, given 100%. I think hunting is a super valuable skill. I think we should all know how to hunt. I think it's a very valuable thing to learn how to do. But hunting, I'm sure you'll agree, is a lot more than just killing stuff, okay? Actually, hunting is, you have to learn stalking, you have bushcraft, you have to learn how to skin, prepare the meat, take all the parts of it, blah, 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 blah. There's a ton involved with that. It's not just killing stuff. And I'm sure you would agree, the people that just like to go out and kill stuff, that's not hunting. You know what I mean? I don't know what that is, but there's something kind of deranged about that. And I don't think that, the guy who goes, shoots the animal, says the prayer over the body and thanks it and stuff like that, that's not who I'm talking about. But why is there so many of the other kind? Why is there this weird, I don't know, mental damage that that these people exist? And they're not like us. Well, they're not like me. Maybe I could be like that if I broke my brain a certain way, but I don't know. Not really something I try to do. Now, something else, getting off topic here a little bit, moving away from the whole idea, is there's stuff that we learn about, and you look at it and you're like, okay, we know that there's something more going on here, like CERN. We've talked about CERN, where CERN is a particle physics lab that nobody has control of. You know what I mean? Like nobody can stop it. Nobody has jurisdiction over this place. And I don't know what they're doing at CERN, but it seems like there's an awful lot of money being dumped in there. So the good people of CERN, with their big Shiva statue they got there, these stories come out, and there are always these weird stories. This is a super weird story out of CERN, saying that researchers at CERN transport antiprotons by truck in the world's first experiment. What? Researchers at the CERN Particle Physics Lab have successfully transported antiprotons in a lorry across the lab's main site. The feat, first of its kind, follows a similar test with protons in 2024. CERN says the achievement is a huge leap towards being able to transport antimatter between labs across Europe. What? Antimatter is almost identical to ordinary matter, except that the electrical charge and magnetic moment are reversed. But if equal amounts of matter and antimatter were created in the Big Bang, as it is widely believed, they would have had annihilated each other, leaving an empty universe. Physicists therefore suspect there are hidden differences that may explain why matter survived and antimatter all but disappeared. Now, call me weird, but why would you want to be transporting antimatter by truck? Like, that seems like a... that's one of those kind of things that makes you go, yeah, we should, we should probably look at that like that. And let's understand again, nobody has government oversight over the dudes at CERN. Nobody can stop them. They are outside of any legal system. Nobody has jurisdiction there. These measurements need to be extremely precise, but this is difficult at CERN's antimatter factory. That's just CERN's antimatter factory, which produces the antiprotons due to interference in nearby equipment. To carry out more precise measurement, the team therefore needs a way of transporting the antiprotons to labs further afield. Now, if you thought doing gain-of-function research on viruses was bad, wait for it. We're going to be moving antimatter by truck across Europe. What could possibly go wrong? I don't know, man. CERN kind of weirds me out, and we all kind of know that there's something very bizarre going on with CERN. Now, I've got a bit of a clickbait title here, which was Scientists Confirm the Baxter Effect. Now, the Baxter effect, I did a video on it. You should check it out. Is essentially that plants are electrical beings that have consciousness involved. And of course, they won't say that because Cleve Baxter is the guy who designed the lie detector test, which we totally use and we accept and we go with that. But we don't look at any of his other research where he's like, hey, plants are conscious and consciousness is in a lot of stuff. Nobody wants to look at that stuff, but they'll sure use his lie detector. Scientists confirm the Baxter effect. I'll admit it, kind of clickbaity. A team of researchers who reported their findings in geophysical research letters said they have made the first known confirmed observance of this rare effect in the wild. The team's study argues that electrical sparks, known as coronal discharges, can produce flickering emissions that emanate from leaf tips. The unusual phenomenon was reportedly documented across several tree species in the eastern United States. Past studies have already confirmed the existence of the discharges in question, albeit only through indirect interference and anomalous electrical field measurements collected during a storm actively near forests. At the heart of the mystery are coronal discharges, which occur when electrical energy associated with thunderstorm builds an electrical charge, sometimes a very strong one, in the atmosphere. The result of this accumulation of charge is the opposite charge forming on the ground below, which travels upward to the highest point available, essentially the same phenomena behind lightning strikes. However, the highest points of opposite charge can reach off to the very tips of leaves and needles on trees through the canopy. From there, the accumulated electricity can escape in the air as a weak discharge. Dark spots within light waves may appear to break the speed of light. So, it's kind of a bizarre thing where they're seeing this, and it's flying in the face of science. Check out the story. So how is it possible that you have vortices in nature triggered by lightning storms that can move faster than light? So we got a bunch of stuff going on here to unpack. I encourage you to check out this article. The takeaway from this is, science changed again. Yeah, that model you got taught, it's like that model of the atom and the protons and neutrons and nucleus and everything. Yeah, that model is just good for a certain amount of equations. And then when you get in university, that model of the atom changes and you do different equations. So that's kind of what's happening with our reality right now as stories like this come out. And it's very, very hard for us to come to grips with this kind of thing. This is what causes ontological shock. This is what causes problems for people. So, of course, they're going to blur it all and keep it all kind of like, look over here, look over there, keep the confusion flowing. Very interesting stuff. Now, the other thing, of course, which I've discussed on the show, is the idea of the world's being made of words. And consciousness is something that, it's we're more than our physical bodies. And it's not really a great thing to think about death, okay? But we're all going to die. At someday, this system is going to end and we're going to move on. You may think about the kind of things you did to make the world a better place or not a better place. Now, there's a phenomenon that they talk about called terminal lucidity, which sounds like, I really don't like when they use terms like this because it takes an incredibly advanced concept and breaks it down into something that's like a little box. So the story of this is dying children regain consciousness and talk to invisible others. One of the many strange experiences reported near the time of death was come to be known as terminal lucidity, an unexpected surge of mental clarity shortly before death that usually contravenes medical expectations. Yeah, which is a fancy way of saying just before people die, stuff starts happening that science can't explain. That is, things like individuals who are comatose with severe dementia suddenly become aware and recognizing those gathered in their bedside in the minutes, hours, or days before their passing. While academic interest in the study has slowly been growing in the last couple of decades, one particular subset of terminal lucidity cases has seen some research in the last few years, the experiences of dying children. Grim. With a new scientific paper published last week has provided what seems to be the first systematic collection of contemporary cases of terminal lucidity in kids 16 and under. The cases were collected from 7 individuals who had witnessed terminal lucidity in a child, 6 of whom had worked as a physician, nurse, hospice worker, and social worker, with the others being an older sibling of the deceased child who had experienced terminal lucidity. So, yeah, why is that happening in children? Why is this happening in humans in general, where, you get this this idea that this mechanical reductionistic thought that's going on in our culture where you die, you're dead, that's it, game over. But obviously, that's not true. Obviously, we are more than our physical bodies, and the evidence is there to promote that. So why don't they look at that evidence? Why don't they look at the evidence that not only promotes it, but confirms it? Why won't they look at that? Well, the reason why is because of the Brookings report, okay, which is, or is the Brookings report? It's the one where the UFOs are going to destroy society. So if they think that if you discover that UFOs are out there and aliens are real, that society will simply stop working. Well, imagine if we find scientific evidence of like extra-dimensional beings. What's that going to do to us? So that's where we get into ontological shock, and that is inbound. Since UAPs have been recognized by certain American institutions, the phenomenon has moved from the margins to become a legitimate subject of investigation. A report from the Office of Direct National Intelligence, published on 25 June 2021, acknowledges that most objects observed and detected by several independent sensors are probably physical. But since 2023, another concept has appeared in American texts, that non-human intelligence, the term introduced by a bill in Congress, does not replace the term UAP, but rather deepens its meaning. Whereas UAP refers to an observable phenomenon, often of a technological nature, but with no known explanation, non-human intelligence evokes a more ambitious hypothesis of one that is more conscious intelligence, external to our species, technologically advanced, and potentially interacting with us. The world is made of words. Interesting. So they're now coming to the grips that, we don't know if it's the alien, it's a non-human intelligence. Now, there's been non-human intelligence around forever. Coco the gorilla, dogs, dolphins, the whole deal. But now we're applying it to so what, government? You're saying little green men are real after you destroyed everybody's lives over it? Well, your timing is a little bit suspicious. Your timing is a bit off. But I suppose, why now? Why are they all pointing this out now? Is it because we got World War III on the horizon? Or maybe it's because the internet is allowing all this focus to happen on Fortean phenomena. We're slowly beginning to realize that, yeah, man, guess what? Bigfoot's not a monkey, and the lights are not from another planet. These things are from a totally different dimension. And we've covered it. The evidence is there. But it's such a hard pill to swallow. It's such a hard pill to swallow that we can't get our heads around it. Our consciousness has a hard time adapting to this rapid change. Now, there's an interest here in neurodivergence and anomalous communication, because these are people that exist. So the University of Virginia and Division of Perceptual Science, DOPS, are conducting research that delves deeper into how our brains process information in relation to anomalous experiences. DOPS is designing and executing what it describes to be as the first study examining unusual, atypical forms of communication and perception, sometimes referred to as anomalous communication, or more traditionally as telepathy. The goal of the study is to better understand the experience you perceive and communicate in ways that may not fit conventional models, which is a fancy way of saying, things that go against science. Science. The term neurodivergence has become increasingly common in recent years as more people recognize their ways of learning, processing information may differ from mainstream social expectations. Also, science. Many researchers emphasize there is no single correct way for the brain to function or interpret information. Neurodivergence is often described as a spectrum that includes such as dyslexia, ADHD, and autism, among other learning differences. And now is a good time for me to bring up the telepathy tapes. The first season of the telepathy tapes. You should go watch that. Well, it's actually a podcast, so you should listen to that. The telepathy tapes are one of those things that got memory hold, and now nobody's talking about it. It made a big surge for a while there, and everyone's like, oh yeah, that's the thing. Oh. But, honestly, that is a paradigm-shifting thing. If the evidence collected within the telepathy tapes, and once you apply that to the world model, things start getting very, very interesting very, very quickly, especially in conjunction with this next story, which talks about how there's a new theory, of course, oh, whoa, it's a new theory, what? suggests that consciousness may come from a hidden wave in the brain, not neurons. Oh, what? Oh, wow. These guys are really, really reaching for it. Like the mechanical reductionistic crowd, they really want the brain. They really just want us to be meat bots so bad. So bad. The cope on this is heavy. The search for physical sources of consciousness, neuroscientists have long looked to the neurons, brain's billions of electrically active cells, as the likely answer. Cope. However, a provocative new theoretical paper challenges that assumption, arguing that our experience of reality may not arise from a neurons firing in the brain. Instead, it could emerge from a hidden wave deep within the brain, acting as a holographic model of the world. Published in the Frontiers of Psychology, Robert Warden, the Active Inference Institute proposes that Robert Warden of the Active Inference Institute proposes what he calls to be a projective wave theory of consciousness, a hypothesis that suggests our conscious experience arises from a wave-like excitation inside a small but critical brain structure known as the thalamus. So, no, it's a wave, and it's generated from a wave from within the thalamus. Right, but it's all in your brain, though, right? It's not being received from anywhere else. You're not more than your physical body. The copium is strong here. And so he'll have his theory. It'll come out. It'll be what it's going to be. But you and I, let's be real. Let's be real for a minute. We know the truth. You know the truth. You know that you're more than your physical body. You know that good and evil exists. You know that the forces that are running the planet right now do not have your best interest at heart. They have their best interests at heart, and they want to control you. That's why they want to make 20-minute cities. That's why they want to have you enslaved by a screen. Okay? So what I'm suggesting to you is, in this show, in this program, is I'm trying to say you should take back what gives you the power. Take back your own power. Learn a trade. Go outside. Have some experiences. Learn to focus. Learn to read. Meditate. Try. All you have to do is try. These chains that they've put around us are invisible. And they're hard to break, but you can break them. All you have to do is try. That is the real red pill. The red pill, blue pill thing. That's what it is the attempt for you to strengthen your own mind and to be a better person. All these news stories I've talked about today have backed this up. And every week I talk about, these same stories that reinforce the same idea. Go back and check them out. This is nothing new here. There's something going on, and science is backing this up. And while you're just cherry picking stories, dude, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. But it's really easy to just roll over and go back to sleep. It's really easy to allow yourself to be overwhelmed. If you keep doing what you've always done, you're always going to get what you've always gotten. So the time has come for us to wake up as a species, as people. And maybe we won't all wake up at once. Maybe we won't. Maybe there's only going to be a few of us. It also always happened that way. There's always been, those fringe leaders that try to get people to wake up and stuff. And then, that grows and it works, and it takes years and years and years for that to happen, if it's not crushed. And it's being crushed by things like cell phones, by, the democracy is just ruled by media. We've seen that time and again. And the mind control that's being exuded on our culture is just, it's never been harder. So that's why there's communities like what we're trying to build here, why we're trying to do what we're doing on the Discord server. Where, you know what? It doesn't matter if you're popular. You can't seek validation from others. You have to seek validation in what you know to be true. If you know something to be true, you don't need to have validation for it because you know it's true. You see what I mean? And that's really what all this is about. There's a bunch of this evidence here that is really pointing to things that we know to be true. And all you have to do to break these chains that surround you, to escape the cage that surrounds your mind, is try. So please, try.